Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 216. Today's episode, I am interviewing Jessica Chang Irish. She is an Emmy-award-winning news reporter turned public speaking coach, and I was so intrigued to speak with her because one of the things that I make sure that my clients are equipped with is not only that seat at the table, but the ability to truly have a voice. And sometimes when we're having a voice at the table, that means that we have to speak on stage or be vulnerable at a networking event. And so I brought Jessica onto my podcast to give us some tips to overcome that fear, to appear more confident on stage, and also how we can use storytelling and vulnerability to really connect with our audience. It's a great episode, and even if you're not at the point where you're appearing on stage regularly, you're going to get so much out of it. Let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I am super excited to have an incredible guest on my podcast today. We are actually somewhat neighbors out in the Bay Area-ish, which is actually a pretty expansive amount of territory. Everybody likes to claim that they're part of the Bay Area. It's several hours wide. And that's because it's really this mecca, this beautiful place in the world. But the other thing that really attracted me about today's guest is that she works with people on their confidence and speaking skills as well as networking. And as you know, this is a huge part of my background as well. And so I like to think I am a good gauge of talent, meaning it's actually really funny because I'm just going to be completely transparent. If somebody reaches out to me and they're like, I'm a speaking coach, the first thing I do is I listen to them speak. I would tell you that a lot of speaking coaches out there do not deliver and hold themselves very well. And then when I saw Jessica, I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, she transcends the screen. Like, she's incredibly relatable. She has an eloquent, you could say great executive presence. She checks all the boxes. But yet, more importantly for me, she's very, very likable and relatable. And that is when I'm coaching you and when I'm thinking about bringing your whole self to the leadership table, it's like, how do we do that? How do we combo professionalism, but then also having those little glimpses and insight and connection to our real self and what that looks like? You've heard me talk on this podcast about authentic power. It's that combination. And I think Jessica has that. I bet she's been working on this for a while. She's very skilled at it. And then thank goodness for all of us, she actually teaches this as well, and she coaches other people to do this for themselves. So I'm just absolutely thrilled to have her on this podcast. Thank you so much, Jessica, for being here today.
Thank you, Stacy. Wow, I'm blown away by that intro. Thank you so much. I don't know if you guys could see me, but I was just like grinning from ear to ear throughout that intro. So thank you.
Yeah, one of the tips I have for networking is get somebody else to introduce you, right? They always do a better job, right? It's pretty cool. Let me give a formal introduction for you, and then we'll just dive into questions because I have a few. Jessica Chang Irish is an Emmy-award-winning news reporter turned public speaking coach who empowers and trains women in leadership to look and sound confident and credible when speaking on stage, in the boardroom, or at networking events, so they can make a bigger impact and bigger income. She's proud to combine her expertise in both storytelling and marketing to help women like you speak up, stand out, and rise in their careers. Thank you again, Jessica.
Thank you, Stacy.
So before we get into all the amazing tips for everyone listening, I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey and your secrets to success. How did you get here?
As you heard in my intro, I did used to be a TV news reporter. That feels like a lifetime ago. In my early 20s, I started out as a general assignment reporter in Midland, Texas, and lived in Odessa, Texas, a neighboring city. If you guys don't know where this is or haven't heard of it, think Friday Night Lights. The book and the TV show and the movie
Yes.
are based in Odessa, Texas. So very much so like a high school football town, and maybe 200,000 people in our coverage area. So that's how many viewers could be watching me on TV at one time. And it was quite a culture shock. I moved from Los Angeles to small town Texas, and it was, looking back, the best experience I could have given myself at that formative age of 21, and just leaving home and being on my own. And so I worked for the NBC station out there, covering car accidents, house fires, shootings, disasters, you name it. Here and there, some fun, positive stuff too. And then I moved on to Norfolk, Virginia, working for the ABC station, where I was, again, a general assignment reporter, and I also was an anchor. And from there, I got to go back to my roots to Southern California, to San Diego, where I worked for a really unique TV station called Channel 4 San Diego. No, not where Ron Burgundy worked, but same number, same city, Channel 4 San Diego. And I had the privilege of working on a news magazine show and also hosting and producing my own interview show. So it was less about the disasters and the when it bleeds, it leads mentality, but more about really digging into what people do, how they make their impact in this world. And I got to tell such amazing stories and meet these inspiring people and share their messages with the world. I got to interview 3 lost boys of Sudan who are now grown and had moved to San Diego as refugees. They wrote a book together, and I got to talk about their childhood and their treacherous journey from Sudan to the refugee camp in Kenya, and all the wild animals and the freezing cold and the scorching heat that they had to endure. So these were the types of people and experiences I was exposed to as a TV news reporter. So that decade of that career was incredible. However, as many of you may think, especially those of you career women who also balance having a family, it's not necessarily conducive to having a family and settling down. And so I did realize that, although plenty of women do it, plenty of women juggle all of it, I just realized, okay, maybe it's not for me. And so I transitioned on from there to doing marketing and communications for nonprofit organizations and universities like Academy of Art University in your backyard, Stacy, and also where I live now, the local California State University. And I gotten to work for some incredible nonprofit organizations. And I realized in this time of going from news reporting to communications and marketing that, hey, I can marry these skills I've learned and these experiences to empower professionals to learn how to tell stories, learn how to craft their messages succinctly and specifically for their audiences so that they can make more of an impact in their circle, in their worlds. So what I do, why I love to do what I do, is because I get to see the glimmer in people's eyes. I get to see that confidence finally unleashing itself in people, showing that, like, okay, if I can take this step, this framework, this formula, and practice with you and craft it in a way that will resonate with my audience, and that is also authentic to me and my own personal experiences, then I can make a difference in my industry amongst the people I speak with. So that's incredibly invigorating for me. So I started my business back in 2015 as a side gig to my full-time nonprofit work. And then it's just progressed from there. I've had my son, now he's almost 5. And so it's still somewhat of a side gig because that's my main job. but it's been growing and growing. And it's so exciting to be able to see all the different professionals that I've been able to impact and empower to speak their messages in a compelling, succinct way.
Awesome. I love that. And sounds like, being willing and kind of going with this journey of life. And, I always work with people on like their North Star, the 3X vision, the bigger vision is always there. And then you kind of just took different paths to get there. I love that. And really, it sounds like it's still unfolding today, which I think is kind of the case for everybody.
Yes.
So just to dig in a little bit more, make it even more personal. I'm just going to share a little bit about my journey through public speaking and then put it back on you and see what is relatable to you. So for me personally, I was an actress since I was little, just like because I was told that I was loud, so you should be on stage because people can hear you. And I was like, great. So then I went to school for it and I was in New York and I did improv and comedy and theater and all these things and I performed. But what I noticed once I started my business and I was actually on stage as a public speaker, it is a very different game. And what I mean by that is I learned the skills of public speaking and I know a lot of technical skills that I help my clients with on, voice modulation, where to stand on stage, like how to find your light, like all of these things that I learned. But what was very unexpected for me is how vulnerable it felt, how to talk about myself. So I had no problem being on stage when I was playing a character, but I had a really hard time being on stage when it was my ideas, when it was something that I felt really uniquely connected to, that I felt very vulnerable about. Like, when I hear your story, it's like one thing to, talk to somebody else about their story and to interview them about their story. But then what happens when the tables are flipped and then now you're being not questioned, but literally questioned, right? They're interviewing us, right? And so I'm curious from you, basically, long story short, did you come out of the womb feeling confident? Did you ever feel afraid? I know that you do work with leaders on that fear and overcoming fear, but I want to hear from you a little bit more on your journey. And I think it's also helpful, and it's quite possible you did come out of the womb, and we can own that you were always like, I want to give you that if that's the case.
I did not.
I'd love to relate and make sure that we bring it down to earth a little bit so that people can understand that we all go through the same journey.
Exactly. And I still get nervous to this day, even after all these years. I was feeling nervous before this podcast interview, honestly, but it's a mix of nervousness and excitement too. And my good friend's niece coined this term as nervous-sighted. So you can have both at the same time. And that's channeling that energy into more of the excitement. And that's what I've learned how to do over the years. So definitely I did not come out of the womb super confident. I was, as an Asian American woman, I was raised to mostly to respond when spoken to. I was one of those kids, and even through high school, who was nervous about raising her hand in class to ask a question or to answer a question. I was a performer. I was a dancer. So that helped me just get on stage. And as I was one of those kids, though, too, who did love reading aloud, popcorn reading in school, or you're going down the row by row, and you're reading a paragraph. You take turns reading paragraphs in class. I loved reading the long paragraphs. I loved being that presenter. So it gave me a glimpse into, okay, so there's something to this, something about speaking. And I emceed, I remember, a poetry festival in elementary school. And my mom was always watching the news. And so observing them, and I was also observing how she perceived them as like a very noble, trustworthy people to look up to get information from, that's, I think, what planted the seeds into me becoming a reporter. And to show me that I have a voice, and my voice matters. So as I grew up and realized, like, as I'm performing on stage, dancing, or as I'm reading aloud, or when I had the courage to go for student council president, for instance, and was speaking at assemblies, it's like, okay, when I say something, people do listen. So it took putting myself out there first, doing it scared, to realize that my voice is heard and that it matters. So come college, when I realized I'm going to major in broadcast journalism, like, I knew what I wanted to do. And I realized that through storytelling, and not just my own stories, but through other people's stories, as you had referred to, I can make even more of an impact because of what they've been through. And if I can craft their stories in a way that evokes emotion, that evokes people to take action, then I can help them follow through and live out their purpose in life. So that became my purpose too, is making that difference through telling other people's stories. And yes, it is so much more vulnerable sharing your own story and your experiences, which has been my challenge as an entrepreneur now. Now it is scarier.
It's totally different, right? I mean, it's like, I really want to acknowledge, like, I just had a woman who has had an enormous amount of success as a senior vice president in marketing, and has coached many people to get up on stage and deliver their marketing ideas for her organization. Now the script has been flipped, and she's up on stage having to deliver her ideas because of the position that she's in and how she's representing the organization. And so she's willing to say, yes, I'll do it, but this is not the place that she's been in. And I think for, at least for my audience, we're at the midway points in our career, in the, like, age-wise and so on. And so we've learned some skills, and we've learned how not to put ourselves in a dangerous situation. And sometimes being on stage can feel incredibly dangerous. Like, that vulnerability is real, right? That fear is justified. Like, you're much more vulnerable when you're like single person, microphone, stage, 500 people in the audience plus, right? Like, all those things, right? And so that fight or flight instinct kicks in, everything. So I know that you work with leaders specifically on fear. And so I'd love to just hear what your 2 cents tip is on actually getting onto the stage, overcoming your fear, and doing it anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate that example that you shared about your client, because in the end, I want you all to remember that it's not about you. Yes, it's so easy to get in our heads about, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to notice my belly? Is my hair straight? Or is it out of place? All those little things. Do I sound nervous? All those voices of doubts in our head can take over. But think about it this way. If you don't speak up, if you don't share your knowledge, your experiences, you are depriving your audience of all this knowledge and expertise that you've been put on this earth to grant us. So try to take that pressure off of you and think, what I have to say is of value. And these people need to know. These people deserve to know this. And I worked with a client who similarly is an executive, a COO at a renowned nonprofit organization. And we'll call her Sonia for this example. She rose through the ranks. She started off in an entry-level position in the ticket office and then rose up to COO after 20 years there. Yet she had this story in her head that I've always been shy. I'm just wired this way. I lose my train of thought. I can't get my thoughts out. And when it came to speaking at board meetings, she would freeze, or she just wouldn't put herself out there, and she'd pass the baton to the CEO and say, here's my report. But as you can imagine, the COO has a lot of valuable information to share to a board of directors. And so the exercise I take every client through in our very first session together in the one-on-one program I offer is an exercise to define and refine your why, your purpose, why you wake up every morning. This is along the lines of Simon Sinek's famous TED Talk. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend it to help you establish what is your why and to learn how to start with your why. And then we dive into defining your brand superpowers. What is your personal brand, right? You probably hear that term a lot, but I call it also your superpowers because this is what makes you unique. This is what makes you stand out. And also how you want to be perceived by others around you. So I asked Sonia, what's your why and what are your brand superpowers? So the brand superpowers that she was proud of herself were how transparent she is as a leader, her empathy, and how collaborative she is. Like she knows she is strong in these areas, and that's why her team loves to work with her. So then she crafted her why around that. In everything I do, I believe in giving my best wholeheartedly, transparently, with empathy, and collaboratively. So you can kind of incorporate your brand superpowers into your why. And then I asked her, are you demonstrating, are you being transparent, empathetic, and collaborative by shying away from your reports at the board meeting, by handing off this information to your CEO to give? And so she said, no, obviously. So how can you step into those qualities that you know you are and that you want to be perceived as? So show us how transparent you are. You have all of this information and operations that is important to share. Be transparent about it. Be empathetic, because you can think, well, yes, I'm intimidated by this board because they're all very reputable, very successful people in our community. But to think that they've at one point maybe felt like you too, but they've also had to rise through the ranks to get to where they are, like you, to try to get on the same level. And then to be collaborative. Obviously, you cannot be collaborative and work together with your team if you're not stepping into and presenting your side of your role, what you bring to the table. So by breaking that down, it helped her realize, like, okay, I can do this. It's a matter of just doing my job. This is part of my job. And then beyond that, we created frameworks for her so that she knows that what I have to give in my report is our updates, our important information that they need to vote on, and that's it. And because of our meetings together, she even presented to her CEO that we need to change how we give our reports in the board meetings to be succinct and to be able to just give them what they need to know. And that helped her so much. So it wasn't all about the fluff and just filling time. So it's a combination of empowering them to understand and embrace their why and their brand superpowers, and then also the frameworks and even transition phrases to help you have time to think about what you want to say next, because that's where a lot of people get caught up too.
Yeah, it makes me think of the whole idea of like, well, you were kind of talking about this side that can feel very selfish when we put ourselves out there. So it's like, well, I don't want to do that because why would I present at this board meeting? Only because I want the spotlight on me. I want this role, or like, why should I network with this person? Because I want a promotion or whatever. And you're presenting this other side, which is basically like, it's selfish not to, right? And it's actually taking away from the rest of the people in the room, from those people who could benefit from your gifts. I mean, quite frankly, I don't want the people who just have the loudest voices to be successful in leadership. We're changing the leadership table, and that's why we're bringing the shy people up with us, right? We're bringing the people that this is difficult, that this is complicated, but they're willing to do it anyway. And having somebody like you, Jessica, in their back pocket is huge, because it just helps them be able to say, okay, you know what? She's right. It is selfish not to do this. So then how? Like, then what do I do? How do I do this presentation? Like, it's so good. And so that kind of leads me into the networking piece of your work. Early on in our career, it's like networking is so important, right? Because it's like everything is available to us. It's all about who you know. And so we put ourselves out there. Plus, we also have, you talked about your 5-year-old son. We have a lot more energy and we have less obligations outside of work. So we can go to network. We can put ourselves out there. And it does start to feel a little bit reciprocal, like, oh, this was an enjoyable conversation. Then later on in life, and at least this is what I observe with my clients, is that networking then has to take on a role of itself. So I go to this networking event. Why? Because I don't have to, right? I have a job. This example you gave of Sonia, she's the freaking COO. She doesn't need to go to a networking event, right? Like, it's like she's the COO. So figuring out, first of all, why it's important for her to be there at this networking event, that's like that selfish not to, put herself out there kind of way, but also those skills, because I do think it kind of shifts and we sort of forget how to network. It's not all about us, it's not because we just want something out of this either mentor relationship or, let's say, a larger event where it just feels like kind of cringy and it's just like, wow, I just felt like I just gave a pitch to 27 people and I'm not really interested in doing that. So,
right?
Yeah, exactly. What's your take on networking and the value that it brings from that selfish, not selfish perspective?
Mm-hmm. I love how you put that, the selfish, not selfish. Yeah. When it comes to, presenting or networking, it's what are the gifts and the talents you have to share. When it comes to networking, for me, I have always enjoyed connecting with people. And so I think networking can get a bad rap because it can be more of that schmooze area where you're trying to get something out of people, right? Give me something. But I think of it more as connecting, because out of these networking events can come collaborations, which can be exciting to help you grow as a leader, can turn into friendships, can turn into mentorships, or even just a fellow corporate female who you can commiserate with and share ideas with. So it's not all about just like trying to climb the ladder or that job, that promotion that you want to get. So for me, I enjoy the networking because of the connections I make and the individuals, the people that enhance my life and enhance me as a businesswoman. And then in turn, how can I support them? So I feel like when it comes to networking, it's going into the event with certain expectations and also even having certain conversation starters prepared and even researching who are the people that are going to be there that I want to talk to, that I want to meet and get to know. And so that mindset, that expectation of how can I support this person, I think will drop guards and then allow you to actually form genuine relationships versus the what can I get out of you sort of approach. What I do and how I like to coach people is to look on, if you're going to a Chamber of Commerce mixer, for instance, look on their website as far as like who's on their board, who are their ambassadors, who's going to be there that you think, oh, they'd be a really cool person to talk to. And you can go up to that person, even if you know nobody there. Find these leaders in the organizations, the officers, and most likely their pictures are on the website or on their social media. And you can go up to them and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm new to so-and-so organization. This is my first event. Can you tell me more about so-and-so chamber? And they will love to share more about their organization with you. If you find out that they are in an industry that you're in, then that leads to even more great conversation starters or conversation continuers, right? The goal of networking and conversation starting is to be able to have a deeper conversation so that we can actually build relationships. And so, yes, even though that conversation starter might be kind of trite or surface level, you're going to have those follow-up questions to be able to dive deeper and really get to know that person. And then in return, they're talking, and then hopefully they will reciprocate. But if not, you can continue to ask questions of them, because people in general love talking about themselves. And even if you're an introvert or speaking to an introvert, I feel like when you come in with questions for the other person, it takes that pressure off of you to have to talk about yourself or think about, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? So have some of those initial questions ready to go.
Right. I'm still like thinking about the part that we hate about networking is we feel like we're going to have to talk about ourselves for 5 minutes first. And so I think these idea of questions first, it really lets you off the hook. And then the other piece that seems really valuable is actually coming up with a couple of questions ahead of time that you want to ask people, because from like when we talk about that, like I think a lot of women in particular just hate this idea of seeming selfish. Like it's just like in their bones that it's just a really bad idea to come off across like all the other people at our company that we don't admire, right? When you go into a conversation without a question to ask, I think it's actually incredibly selfish. So what do? You like walk up, either one, you default to talking about yourself, which nobody cares. And then, or two, you just go into the conversation being like, hi, nice to meet you. Right? Which is awesome. Like,
and then you talk about the weather.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's wasting everybody's time. That's very selfish. So just come up with a good question, even if it's like, what do you think about the chamber? Like, why did you get involved in the chamber? Like, it's huge. This is not trite. This is actually, what Jessica is explaining is the work. This is the work. And it's so simple. Like come up with these questions ahead of time and then be willing to ask them. And you're going to notice that the conversations go way better. I guarantee it.
Exactly. And you brought up a great example, because this was a tip I was going to give is good to conversation starter is you do go up to one person or maybe two people and you say simply, hi, I'm Jessica, and you extend your hand, they'll say their name. And you say, how long have you been involved in the chamber? Or if they're not one of the officers, you can say, how have you been involved? Or if it's maybe even a party, right? And then the host. That's the one thing you have in common. How do you know Stacy? And then
so good. I'd love to talk about Stacy. Like if somebody asks, how do I know Jessica? Well, let me tell you. Like I'm going to be so excited to share that information.
Because when you think about it, you're finding commonalities. Right? In that first question, if they talk about, how you know Stacy, obviously that's one commonality already, but then you're going to learn about what their interests are, because maybe they're in a club with you or some kind of activity. And then you find out, oh, me too. That's something I enjoy doing too. So that is what creates friendships, relationships, is those commonalities. So that's our goal in these conversations during networking events.
You mentioned before we started recording today that you have some free resources. My sense is there's something in here. So would you be willing to share with my audience anyway? I don't know if one of them is about good questions, but in general, what kind of resources that people have?
Yes.
Or you have, I mean.
For networking.
Yeah.
Yes. A free resource that I have for you is a template on how to introduce yourself with confidence and intention. When you do have to talk about yourself, there's a template that helps you introduce yourself with some thought behind it. And to keep in mind who your audience is, because no matter what, presentation, networking event, you always have to keep in mind, who is my audience? Who am I talking to? And why should they care? Because if they don't care what you're talking about, then there's that conversation that goes out the window, or that presentation, you're going to lose their interest. It's going to go right over their heads. So this worksheet helps you identify that and who's your audience, and even to think about like, who is, if you do want to go into a networking event to share about the work that you do, your company or your business, first think about who is your target customer or client. Who is it that you help? And then how do they feel before working with you or your company? Do they feel frustrated, overwhelmed? Do they feel lost? And then identify how would they feel after working with you or your company? Will they feel relieved? Will they feel empowered? Peace of mind? And then you plug them into this template. And so I have an example here. It's kind of like Mad Libs. You just plug it in, plug and play. But one example would be, hi, I'm Emily. You give your name, and then your title. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at XYZ company. And then I help, and then you say who you help. I help the other leaders within our company who are focused on executing their vision and strategies of their departments. And then by what? What do you do? What is it that you do? By giving them, you plug that in, by giving them solutions and procedures so they can feel assured that we are, so assured is that feeling after working with you, assured that we're continuously improving and growing. So it's, and you can shorten it as much as you want. It's based on the atmosphere around you. But this could be good for when you're at one of those events where you're going around the room and you have to stand up and give a 1-minute introduction of yourself. So that spiel could be good for that, because you're addressing who your audience is and how they feel, what you do, how they feel after working with you. For a networking event, you can abbreviate it. Say, I'm the COO of XYZ company. I help so-and-so do this and feel this way. And so that summarizes it. And the reason why I bring up the how they feel beforehand and how they feel afterwards is when you're evoking emotion in the people you're talking to, that's what makes you memorable. Are you going to be as memorable if you share that I am the COO of so-and-so company? Not as much, but if I learn a little bit more about who you help and how you do that, then I'm more likely to remember you and also be able to relate to you in some way or another, even if I'm not a COO.
So good. Yeah. How do we get this?
You can grab
how do we get this download?
You can get this download through my website, Jessica Chang Consulting, or shoot me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever you are, at Jessica Chang Irish.
Awesome. We'll also link to it in the show notes for this episode as well. Thank you so much. This is incredible. When I worked in women's leadership, we called it PMS, and it was your personal marketing statement. And it always made us sort of laugh, right? It's like,
great acronym. I love that.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. Well, okay. So I know that you have 50 more tips, anything from calming your nerves to like where to physically walk on stage. I have no idea. I don't know. You're the expert. What am I missing? What else does my audience need to hear? What can you help us with? So good. We have your time. I'm like, tell us all the things.
Of course. One thing I want to share with you all is before a presentation, oftentimes we go into the presentation not knowing who our audience is or what they want to hear from you. And so oftentimes that's where the fear arises. It's besides, what are they going to think of me? It's what if I'm not giving them what they want? What if they tune me out? What if I am stealing their time, their valuable time away, and they're not getting anything out of it? So to reduce those chances, get to know your audience ahead of time. Let's say you're speaking at a conference and you really don't know who's going to be in the room. Ask your contact person who is in charge of the conference for a list of participants and their email addresses. And of course, ask the contact person's permission, but see if you can email these participants, even send them a questionnaire about what is it that you'd like to walk away with after listening to this presentation on this topic. What are your pain points? What are you feeling right now? Where are you struggling with blank area? Something really quick. Send out a survey. For me, when I do maybe smaller workshops with 20 people or so, I'll ask my main contact to interview 3 to 5 of them. So it's like a one-on-one focus group in a way. So I can find out specifically, what would you like to learn from this? What are your challenges right now and how can I help you? So that way, immediately, my content is of value and it's going to help my audience. So you're going in already with that much more confidence, knowing that this is going to be valuable for them. Also, if you can't do all of that, get to the event venue early. Try to shake hands with the people that are coming in, introduce yourself, find out who they are, what they do, and what they want to learn from you. And that way, that just breaks the ice and you have that many more familiar faces in the audience. I know for me, it helps me so much to have those people to look at that are smiling and nodding at me or that I know, or I can even tailor my examples and stories around their industry or whatever their struggle might be. And so that gives me credibility too, not only for that person, but the others in the audience that, okay, I understand what you guys are dealing with.
Yeah. And, from a marketing perspective, the genius of this is it makes you sticky. So the first thing I thought of was the Blue Man Group. So I used to live in New York for a long time and I would always go to the Blue Man Group. But one of the things that they do is they have these pipes in the lobby and they're listening to your conversations. And so this is like a funny gimmicky thing that when you're standing in the lobby, they're listening to you the entire time. And then at the beginning of the show, they repeat back to you some of those phrases and different things that, Susan said this, whatever. But I have to admit that that's part of the reason that I kept coming back. And so when we talk about that relatability factor, just when we hear that we're heard and we hear even the story, not our name, but just something about us repeated back on stage, we feel that instantaneous relatability and it makes our relationship sticky. Like people want to be heard. People want to be listened to, right? I'm sure that this applies. It's not like, it doesn't have to be in the creepy, like listening way. Like you've given us this incredibly transparent way to do this. It's all above table. It's all like, I genuinely want to connect with you. And then also it is going to make you feel better, it sounds like, and make the audience feel more connected to you. It's just like genius.
Exactly. Complete win-win.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. All right. So now I'm going to put it back on you a little bit for my final question today is, why do you personally feel motivated to have a voice at the table?
When I think back to my evolution as a career woman and going back to how I realized that my voice matters, I think about when I chose my career and as an Asian American woman, as an Asian American kid of my generation, ABC, American born Chinese, you're almost expected to become a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or a career businesswoman. And I chose something completely out of the ordinary, becoming a journalist. And when my parents first found out, they're like, how about you minor in business too?
Yeah, exactly.
And they found out that my first job, I'd have to move far away. And I only made $18,000 in my first job. So luckily it grows exponentially as you move up the ladder. But I realized that too, I wanted to use my voice and my presence to stand out in a positive way. Mm-hmm. I wanted to break the mold and also show other people, other women, other Asian American women, that they too can speak up to stand out. So yes, I took the on-camera route, and some of those cultural pressures and expectations might have motivated me to take this area. But like I had mentioned, I realized that through the power of storytelling and the power of being able to move people, that can make a positive impact in this world. So now through my business, if I can, like I said, help you realize you have so much value, so many gifts to bestow upon us, then I have made my mark. I fulfilled my purpose. And then in turn, you are fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah.
So it's this trickle down effect. If I can empower you, think about how many more you are empowering, and then so on and so forth. So that's what drives me. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. And you're going to love this. So I went into theater, and everybody, my practical advice, like the one, you said doctor, lawyer. For you, it was like, take the more practical route. For me, it was to be a news reporter. That's what everybody kept telling me. I'm telling you, because I think it was like, well, we know that Stacy is not going to become a doctor or a lawyer. I don't know. They just like gave up on me for that one. But they were like, if we can just hone her in and she can do that traditional news reporter thing. So that was supposed to be my tradition. So I thought that was really funny when you said that. I was like, so perspective, right? Here, it's like my family was begging me to be a news reporter. I was like, why did you be a news reporter? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, like, your first job where you were talking about, like, I was like, I don't want to talk about horrible stuff all day. Right? Like, it just sounds awful. And it sounds awful, right? But I just thought that was funny. That was my practical advice. Like, if you could just go mainstream news reporter. But I love it. I think it's brilliant. Yeah. So anything else we need to hear? And also I want to find out how to connect with you and for people to continue following you and so on. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn and so on, but let us know what else we need to hear.
One important thing to mention too is, speaking of my role as a news reporter and how I started off in my business, I started my weekly video tips in 2017, quite polished and buttoned up and like a reporter. My background, not so much. It was just like makeshift in a spare room we had. However, I definitely came across as like reporterish. And now that we're in 2024, many of you know that speaking with authenticity, I know that's one of your values, Stacy, means being vulnerable and means not being all polished. So whether it's on stage or, like I said, I speak on video a lot, or at networking events, I feel that in order to be authentic, not robotic, not be all polished, and in order to be more relatable, you do need to be vulnerable. So what does that mean, though? That means being okay sharing a challenge that you have gone through yourself and sharing how you have come out on the other side, or maybe you're in the middle of it and shedding a little bit, peeling back the onion and showing a little bit of that, some of the worries that you have, some of the challenges that you've faced or are facing. And then also showing your strength by talking about what you are doing day to day to get through that, or what you have done to come out a stronger person. So I feel like that is what is going to connect you a lot more with your audience members nowadays, versus the everything is perfect and I have had success all my life and I look perfect with my suit and my hair all done. So especially as career women who are moms too, we juggle a lot of responsibility and stresses in our lives. So let's be real here so that we can support each other and show each other that even in the messiness, that we can succeed.
Oh, so good. You've inspired so many people today. I know, Jessica. Thank you again. tell us your website one more time and any other ways for people to contact you.
Thank you so much. It's jessicachangconsulting.com is my website. I am most active on Instagram, which is Jessica Chang Irish. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Chang Irish.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Jessica. I am so excited to now be your new BFF. Yes, I just claimed it.
Yay.
And I have no doubt that our paths will continue to cross. And I'm also excited for my audience to be able to implement some of the stuff that you shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. This means so much to me.
Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today. Yourpromotabilityscore.com and let me know how it goes.